G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Isn't technology marvellous? In a cluttered sort of a way. Thought I might show you the local paper. For those of you who's never seen it before, we're going to examine the Examiner of Thursday, November 28. Because although a lot of people like to disparage the local newspaper, you know, it's not a shadow of its former self. It doesn't have a local office in the main street of Glen. It's printed in Armidale. It's jam-packed full of ads paid for by the local council. So you'd think it's kind of unlikely that the paper's going to say much controversial about anything that the government is doing. More bloody ads for shit that I don't want. Ads for taking out ads. Entire page full of padding and quizzes and fluff and nonsense. But then, again, would you look at the opinion page and the letters page? Nicholas Fuller, the editor in Armidale, and what's his name, Andrew Messenger. How's that for nominative determinism? The Glen Examiner has a reporter called Andrew Messenger. Yeah, they obviously had a really good time. Such a good time, I'm going to read it to you. The whole bloody page. Strap in, it's worth it. But it's getting a little bit cold, and the weather station says it's going to rain. One of them does. This one says it's just going to be a bit cloudy. But on the grounds that it'll give you something to watch while I'm reading, we'll fight the light the fire. The little pot-belly blasting of the furnace. It does go well. So it does. Just saying by Simon Burke. Barnaby punches the lights out of the sun. You know, there's a sort of genius in the way Barnaby Joyce negotiates this world. I think it goes like this. Say something crazy. Then, while people are reeling back in shock, say something even crazier. And then, the masterstroke. Say something completely and absolutely mad. It's that last one that gets you, because up until then, you are busily considering some sort of rational response to crazy comments 1 and 2, but the third one just rocks you, to the point where, overwhelmed by the nonsensical, you just shake your head and stumble back to your corner, wondering where it all went wrong. A case in point, my friends. Recently, Joyce got into some pretty hot water with his stunning suggestion that the 2 people who died in a bushfire near Glen Innes were, quote, most likely people who voted for the Green Party, unquote, and that he was, quote, not going to start attacking them. That's the last thing I want to do, unquote. Does that make any sense to you? Completely baffles me. Joyce then responded to the general outrage by claiming, quote, some dweeb, unquote, had completely misinterpreted him, and that he was actually making a strong statement against political point scoring during bushfires. Does that stand up? Nope. And, as we would expect, he dealt with the matter in that subtle and nuanced manner that he has become famous for, saying that he would, quote, punch the effing lights out, unquote, of those who had misinterpreted his remarks. Watch it, ladies. Well, I'm of the belief that Joyce was engaging in some pretty unintelligent and callous political point scoring when he gave us his gut feeling about how those who lost their lives in the bushfire voted. Am I intentionally misinterpreting him? Is he going to, quote, punch my fucking lights out, unquote? Shall I say, quote, bring it on, dude, I'm a ninja, unquote? Anyway, while we were collectively scratching our heads, attempting to unravel the logic of comments 1 and 2, the champ moves in and lands a beauty. Quote, bushfires are caused by changes to the magnetic fields of the sun, unquote, he confidently asserted. Breathtaking. That's the sort of thing you learn at university, but not in the science department. Scientists call Joyce's comments, quote, bizarre, unquote, quote, wacky, unquote, quote, ludicrous, unquote, and, quote, uninformed, unquote. And there you have it. I've already forgotten about crazy comments 1 and 2. I'm too busy Googling the magnetic fields of the sun. Another win for the man. Genius. Simon Burke is an ACM journalist, Australian Consolidated Media. Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's the opinion on Barnaby Joyce. Or as I like to call him, Barnaby the adulterous bastard breeder Joyce. As since his wife kicked him out, he's bred 2 bastards with his new trophy girlfriend. But of course, I'm just a little bit oldie-fashionedy. Sort of like the electorate that he conned into believing that he was a Conservative representative, therefore, who stood and campaigned on his family values. So now we move to the letters to the editor. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yes, you're going to get them. But you won't be getting them in chronological order as printed for reasons that will become clear. We'll read this one and this one and this one and this one, and then we'll read the comment, and then we're going to read selfish electorates. It's going to be the final stroke. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Support for the bush. I have always thought of myself as an optimist, a Pollyanna, a glass half full person. But when I wake up to the sight of a blood-red sun in a thick haze and the constant smell of smoke in the air, it's hard not to feel deep sadness and concern. When I see the green grass of the New England turn to grey dust and the leafy forest of your national parks and reserves alight, a sense of dread and gloom comes over me. I live in Sydney, but I have a deep connection to Glen, and I cannot for one moment imagine what you are all feeling every single day as this interminable drought drags on and these God-forsaken fires keep burning. When will it end? When will it rain? I don't know the answer to that, but please know that there are people outside your community thinking of you and hoping that it will be soon. Thank you, Belinda Cassidy, Sydney. Water pumped from creek. Just wondering why Glen Severn Council is allowing town ratepayers to pump water from Farrakabad Creek on a regular basis to water town gardens and lawns and fill their water tanks. Asks Pauline Atkins, Glen Innes. Dear Minister, to the Honourable Adam Marshall MP, battery cages force layer hens to live in a space no larger than an A4 sheet of paper. They are raised in cramped, crowded sheds with little to keep them active and healthy. As a global animal welfare charity, World Animal Protection is deeply concerned by the living conditions of most of Australia's egg-laying hens. These sensitive, intelligent and social birds can't even open their wings and often endure significant suffering and trauma from growing up in such a confined space. This is no life for a chicken. On behalf of the thousands of voters who expect better and layer hens who deserve better, we call on you to support the proposed phase-out of battery cages. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to free 11 million layer hens a year from a life of suffering. The European Union, New Zealand and some American states have already banned battery cages. Caged eggs are also being phased out by major supermarkets and food companies across the world. We can't let New South Wales fall behind. Polling we conducted earlier this year showed more than 80% of New South Wales consumers are unaware that battery cages still exist in Australia with no plans to phase them out, revealing an alarming lack of awareness about the conditions of the hens laying our eggs. The government must take a stand to ensure we as a country can keep up with the rest of the world, putting Australia firmly on the map as a nation that says no to cruelty. We believe that change is inevitable. It is time for Australian legislation to reflect the global trend of ending the use of cruel battery cages. When the proposal for a phase-out of battery cages is considered by Australian agriculture ministers, we urge you to be a good egg and support it. We would welcome the opportunity to meet with you and explore how we can work together to give chickens a better quality of life. Simone Clark, Director, World Animal Protection. Deer hunter. We are bow hunters and a watibg. I don't know what a watibg is, but W-A-T-I-B-G. Watibg, to hunt deer around Glen. However, we can't get onto property owners get permission to hunt their land. Surrounding property charge ridiculous fees to hunt deer. This is stopping bow hunter from actively hunting the deer, leading to overpopulation of deer. Open the properties to bow hunter and things will change. Gun hunters have overshot issues as their bullets can travel kilometres. Bows, you got 1,000 metres. You can contact me for more on my electric mail. Paul Toomey from Goonellabah. Well, that explains the spelling. Now we move on to the comment. Some optimism in the climate of denial. I live in an area that, like much of Australia, is being affected by bushfires. Okay, it's in a bad mood because of the bushfires. It has an inappropriate affect. Damn, I hate it when people confuse affect with effect. He lives in an area that, like much of Australia, is being affected by bushfires. An area where people have lost their properties, their livelihoods and their lives. And yet daily we see in our newspapers, on social media and coming out of politicians' mouths, a denial of the science that says climate change is behind this. So here's a brief lesson in climate science. Human activities, burning fossil fuels, our transportation, agricultural practices and changes in land use produce greenhouse gases. They produce more greenhouse gas than can be taken up by carbon sinks, plants, soil and oceans. The excess gas released into the atmosphere creates an insulating blanket around the Earth, trapping more solar radiation. The end result, the Earth gets hotter. We learn in primary school science classes that fire needs three things. It needs fuel, it needs a source of ignition, and it needs oxygen. Climate change is causing increased temperatures. Climate change is resulting in less rainfall. Combined, these create more dry fuel ready to burn. Add a source of ignition, whether the action of an individual person or a work of nature, and, well, we all know the result. Got to just jump in there. You recall, what would it be, 15 years ago? No, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. 172 people died in Victoria in one day as a result of bushfires. 161 of them died as a result of fires caused by failures of the electric grid. But everybody seems to go out there hunting the arsonists who've caused the bushfires that are a danger to the community. The danger to the community is the electric grid. Add a source of ignition, whether the action of an individual person or work of nature, and, well, we all know the result. Yes, bushfires have always been a threat in Australia, but the science tells us that unless we do something, this threat is only going to increase. However, there is hope. Around the world, we have smart people working on solutions that can help to stop the progression of climate change. Don't know about that. If you stop burning carbon tomorrow, it's going to get hotter for at least another 25 years. And that's without factoring in the tipping point that we went past in 1996 when the methane clathrates began to bubble up off the coast of Norway. Back to the letter. We have scientists and engineers developing more efficient alternative energy sources which can reduce our reliance on burning coal and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have companies starting to provide new, more environmentally friendly transport options. We have researchers developing materials and products that can be used to replace plastics and concrete, again reducing emissions. We have scientists who can advise us on ways we can change our land usage and management to capture more carbon. Scientists have been warning us about what is going to happen and why. Scientists are also providing solutions. Dr. Mary McMillan is a science lecturer at the University of New England. Yep, okay, so that's the mild part of the paper. I'll just put a little bit more wood on the fire, if you'll excuse me moving across the front of the camera. This little machine is marvellous, but it doesn't actually run for long without refueling. 15 to 20 minutes is kind of ideal. If you put more wood in there, it doesn't burn for longer, it just gets a bigger fire and it runs hotter. Such is life. And you can just wait and anticipate while I have a sip on my strawberry coffee. Who would have thought you could get strawberries and cream flavoured coffee? A vanilla latte. Now, piece de resistance. Selfish electorates. As the results of climate change become more and more evidence, not evident, evidence. As the results of climate change become more and more evidence, not actually wrong there, it's a correct usage of the word, just not a usual one. As the results of climate change become more and more evidence, I want to say that I will not be donating to any bushfire, drought, flood, food or cyclone appeal at all, not 1 cent. Why should my money go to selfish, ignorant electorates? You shouldn't even get taxpayers' money, although I'm sure your farmers just love all that lovely free cash. This is true for the vast majority of rural electorates, but in New England in particular, the voters have re-elected for the worst climate change denier in this country. The good folk of New England chose to re-elect a liar, an adulterer, a hypocrite, a religious crank. Therefore, if your townships happen to burn down, your farms wither and die, your businesses go broke, you will get precisely zero sympathy from me. I was taught that one ought to take the consequences of their actions. So be it. You should suffer the consequences of your own stupidity. Why should I care if there are fatalities from fires in New England? Joyce doesn't care. They're probably Greens voters, so he doesn't care if they live or die. So I don't care if the idiots who voted for Joyce die either. Next time, you might vote for integrity, honesty, reason, science, the future, your children, and truth. Everything that Joyce is not. I know you people haven't voted beyond your wallet for more than a decade, but try voting with integrity. You might just like it. So said Stuart Davey from Canberra. I wonder how Barnaby the adulterous bastard breeder Joyce likes that sort of thing, huh? Selfish electorates. Unaccustomed as I am to leaping to the defence of my neighbours, people in the electorate of New England, grass pirates, cattle barons, graziers, croppers, loggers, miners, apiarists, all the people who make a living off the land. I got to say, at the last election, only 52% of them actually voted for Barnaby number 1. Only. 52% of them. And they pretty much appear to have done so out of rusted on, ingrained, unthinking party loyalty. It's not that they're individually assholes. They've been conditioned to respond, to vote for the National Party because that's what their bloody ancestors have always done. Once upon a time, they thought outside the box. They abandoned the National Party because the National Party abandoned a promising candidate, but he had a degree in economics, and oh shit, the National Party didn't want Tony Windsor, so Tony Windsor stood as an independent, a state independent, and he got to be the state member. He got to be the Speaker of the House. He shifted to federal parliament. He was the best independent member that we've ever had. He was the best member we've ever had. He was the most popular politician in Australia. And then, together with Bob Katter, he got blamed for installing the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd minority Labor government. And the National Party went friggin' ballistic. The reason the National Party had kind of left him alone the whole time he was in power was because they counted on him to back the National Party against the Labor Party anytime it came to a crunch or a push. And instead of that, what he said was Tony Abbott would be a bloody disastrous Prime Minister for Australia, and he did what he could to stop Tony Abbott from becoming Prime Minister. And what happened? The Liberal Party decided Tony Abbott was a bloody disaster as an Australian Prime Minister, and they put Malcolm Turnbull in his stead. So I would argue that the National Party ought to pull their head in and accept the fact that voting for Tony Windsor was the right thing to do, voting for Barnaby Joyce was the wrong thing to do. And Barnaby Joyce, well, he's killed the inland rivers. He okayed the idea of pumping water out of the rivers in times of low flow when there was no rain. So we went into this drought with no water in the rivers. He's a lobbyist for the coal industry. He wants to open the Galilee Basin. He wants the Adani company from India to dig billions of tonnes of coal out of the ground and pump it into the sky, because the amount of global warming we've seen so far is not enough for Barnaby the adulterous bastard breeder Joyce. And his infamy has spread so far that the people in Canberra are writing to Glen and telling us they don't give a shit if we burn. Speaking as a greenie who lives in a bushfire fuel bomb, speaking as the greenie whose son is a fire brigade captain, you know, like the first one to drive over the burning bridge to get onto Waitalaba to help them in their firestorm, that was my son. I got to say to Stuart Davey in Canberra, mate, at this point in time, all Australians of our persuasion have got to go on is schadenfreude. All we can do is say, we fucking told them so. I've been talking like this for 40 years and they've been laughing at me for being a greenie. Oh, but you're not into progress. You think we should just stop making money and worry about the bloody frogs. Yes, I think we should worry about the frogs. Whatever killed the dinosaurs, the frogs survived it, and we're killing the frogs. During the millennial drought, Latoria burralongensis hung out here with me, and at the end of the millennial drought, they were taken off the biologically extinct listing and put back into the only critically endangered listing. So worry about the frogs. You might not think they vote, but golly gosh, when the environment decides to knock you out of power, the frogs have had their say. Anyway, that's the Glen Examiner's opinion, comment and letters page for the 28th of November, and it was just such a rinky-dink crackerjack offering that I couldn't help myself. I had to share it. Over a strawberries and cream vanilla latte. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. We're all going to burn. You know that, don't you? It's the Liberal national end game for Australia. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.